Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Riot Kent, and we are back with patch Post-Mortems. It's been a new set launch, it's been a new patch, and now we can actually talk about how patches are going. So 11.16, the patch Kent made challenger. How's it going, Kent?
It's going well. It's still climbing. Still climbing. The felt pretty good about the patch overall. There were some things that like stood out, some things that could still use loves that we'll be addressing in 11.17. But for the most part, the patch felt pretty flexible, which is nice.
Cool. All right. Well, for those of you that might not have seen one of these since we last did them, basically this is where we run through the patch changes that we did, and we talk about what worked, what didn't, what do we regret, what are we what are we learning from this. So it's a good chance for you to see and talk about us admitting our mistakes. So let's jump into this. There were Sentinel Little Legends. Those are cool. Scrolling by. All right, traits. Abomination. This is where, because in 11.15 at launch, Abomination was kind of becoming this universal frontline, and so we had to nerf it in 11.15B a little bit, and then we nerfed it even more here. Um, Generally, it seems like Abomination is still playable, but the challenge here seems to be that like A-Bomb 3 might actually be balanced now. A-Bomb 4 and 5 are kind of sucky, it feels like.
Yeah, it feels like the trade-off with like between running another A bomb versus running more CC through Revenants or Mystics through Gwen, Teemo or like Hellion with Lulu, it just isn't worth the trade-off. So we need to find a way to make like the 4 and the 5 more worth it. Yeah, and that's been the challenge because most players just like they play 4 A bomb and then they drop down to A bomb 3, which feels pretty balanced now. But yeah, I need to tune up the other two parts some more.
Yeah. Legionnaire. This was a rework to get, because some of the Legionnaires like Draven and Callista were fine, but others like Riven, Kale, weren't really using their trait that much. What I'll say is, I think the Omnivamp side of this was a massive success. It feels like it opened up some new itemization paths, made these characters pretty good. I think it did make Riven a little too good of all of them. But the other thing that I think is a big failure here is it didn't really make 468 Legionnaire any more exciting. I don't see a ton of 468 Legionnaire. Now that being said, part of that is the champ unity of the trait, but at the same time, I think there's still room to make 468 even better.
Yeah, looking back on this, I think this is definitely like a positive change, and even like I think the numbers landed pretty well for like those trait breakpoints. But as far as like helping 4, 6, and 8, like you mentioned, isn't hasn't it hasn't helped that much. It just made the existing comps better, and like players actually want to put in the 2 Legionnaires. Sometimes even go up to 4 Legionnaire, but not really ever play like a full Legionnaire 6 comp, and so
Yep.
something we need to work on.
Yep. All right. Tristana attack speed nerf. I mean, I'm glad we did this. What I'll say is that in general, I think you're gonna hear us say this a lot. That like it was good, but it wasn't enough. And every time I say that, though, I'm actually kind of glad because we talked about how at the start of Reckoning there was that meta thrash all over the place where like skirms are the best, now skirms are the worst, and now skirms are the best, and we've avoided that this time. There hasn't been much meta thrash. Comps that were good are still good. They're just more balanced. New comps are being discovered. So overall, every time I say it was good but it wasn't enough, I'm still happy, and that's a case here. So I'm glad we didn't go overboard, but yeah, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, and I think part of that also is like this looked like a really big Tristana nerf to the unit itself. Ended up not being enough, but also I think we should have thought about like should we touch the other units that she's paired with, and like if players optimize, try to get ahead. Like if players optimize more, what are the units we can maybe touch? Maybe there's like a misfortune nerf that we can put in, something like that.
Yeah, I think the other big thing to talk about here is that at the time, this was when we put this in the patch. This was still when like the 6 Hellion version was still the meta, and the innovation of the backline cut Kled for meta so that Trist always gets perfect positioning. That innovation definitely scaled up the power beyond what we were expecting, and it's definitely something we didn't catch.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
cool. Aurelia, am I okay to say Aurelia seems balanced now? Like, I mean, maybe she's still a little too good, but like she's got to be close at this point.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too tanky, but like she kind of ties together so many different comps. And like if anyone were to make a Legionnaire 6 comp work, she's like the front line, one of the main front lines. So you know she needs to be pretty good for like where her trait structure is. But yeah, I think this nerf like put her in a pretty good spot.
Yep. Nocturne. I feel like I'm gonna throw you under the bus a little bit here. We talked about this and like how I didn't think it was enough. And I think we called it like Nocturne 1 still kind of sucks. Nocturne 2 is kind of meh, and Nocturne 3 is still really good. At least we have some balance levers. Although I don't know, I feel like we missed the mark on this because even like looking at what I'm trying to do in 11-17 to kind of push this further, the numbers are already getting really tight.
Yeah, I think because of like how it's structured, we don't have as much movement possible. Like you're moving in fives when you move that bonus damage, and so yeah, I can see how that's like still kind of rough to do the scaling. But like it was a good change. I think we could have done better by
Yep.
like maybe spacing that out some more and moving the attack damage ratio down some more. So it's still something we can do too in the future if we feel like we need to. So.
Yeah. It's weird how the like because the auto attack champions are so tied to their base AD. I don't know. I feel like this continues to be a problem that like AD spell champions are just so tied to star level.
Yeah, especially melee ones because they get that HP, so they can go in there and then you give them some beat like
Yeah.
healing, and they just heal back to like this maximum health. They just get into the cycle of like unkillableness.
Yep.
So, yep.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Tier 4, Galio. I think this is another example of right direction. Not enough. I don't know. I mean, Galio seems okay now. I think he seems decent. He's obviously no revenant, is I think kind of the problem, but I'm not sure he ever can be without any actual CC. So
Yeah, I think Galio landed actually in a pretty good spot. I think Sentinel didn't land in a good spot because of like the Lucian change and how
yep,
we like made mathematical Sentinels not work well anymore.
yep,
But like as a unit, I think Galio works really well as like the super tank when you don't want to build like the Revenant CC, you want to build a tank. He works really well. The 3-star might be a little bit weak now, unsure really yet, but I think this was a positive change.
yeah. The weird thing about the 3-star is it's so tied to archangels. I have seen people still win with the 3-star with archangels, but you don't have archangels. It's kind of a joke.
Yeah, he needs to be able to do that, dish out that damage. If you're like building full tank, he doesn't do enough damage anymore to like
Yep.
carry. But I mean, he is also just a tank with a ton of health, so
Yeah.
trade offs there.
Karma, again, another example of good direction. Karma comps are at least in the money now. Like it's possible to win with them, but like she's still weak compared to a lot of the 3-star 3 costs. Even Vel'Koz, like you'd still rather play Vel'Koz than Karma. So could have been further, but again, right direction.
Yeah, I definitely see some Karma comps go first. I know like throw players, Robin Song's been playing a lot of Karma, but I'm trying to like gauge whether or not like is it because Karma doesn't do enough damage, or is it because they're just like BT AD carries are like in the meta and she can never kill those units, or like she struggles in that matchup. Basically, not never, but she struggles in the matchup. So I'm trying to gauge like how much is it that she needs more damage versus like we just need to shift the meta, watch the meta shift a little bit towards like not lots of AD with Bloodthirster.
Yeah, my belief is her win condition is that she does enough damage so that the army becomes like a 6v2, and then the rest of her team locks the BT in place so that she can finally burst them. If she ever gets into like the 1v1 or the 2v2 scenario, she's supposed to lose. And so that's
Yeah,
kind of her thing is like you have to ramp and beat them before they beat you.
that's a good point. And she also pairs really well with Teemo, who can counter those like AD
Yep.
carries. So that if you surround the AD carry, like you'll eventually take him down, not 1v1, but like
Right.
5v1. Yeah,
Right.
makes sense.
Lucian, I feel like it's unfortunate because Lucian's still really good in the mid game. Like you still play him in stage 4, but my god, does he fall off? And I know you won a few games with Lucian, so like it's still possible. But without the mathematically thing, it just kind of puts Sentinels in a very hard to play place.
Yeah, I agree. I think doing this change, especially like what it hurt him a lot to lose the Cannoneer procs, which now procs every 10 instead of every 5. I think that ended up hurting him a lot. And so like if you do the builds that you used to do in 11-15, they're not as good. You need like to put that rune hands on him to actually get that extra damage. And I mean, everyone says Lucian's bad, and like I kind of like he's not great, but I've been playing him a lot, and I feel really good about him. But like I know he's weak, and it's just like the shift in the build is kind of shocking, and also he has like less health, and just overall he didn't land in a very good spot. And so like for 11-17, it's one of our like big targets to make Lucian strong.
Yep. Quicksilver, we buffed. No one's building this item still. It's so fascinating to me how like I get all these complaints about like, oh, my team keeps getting CC'd and my carry can't move, and I'm like, there's literally an item for that, and they're like, yeah, but no. And it's so fascinating, and it does make me wonder. Remember the homogenous item pitch I talked about a while back, where it was like, I wonder if we're ever going to have to go down that road, but
or maybe like Quicksilver gets some of that radiant bonus permanently, something like that, where it doesn't feel as bad to build this as a full defensive item that falls off after a certain part of the
it's
game.
so weird to talk about that though, because like in previous sets, it was literally the best item in the game.
Right.
So
there are some arguments around that, like, well, maybe this is best in slot for Riven, maybe best in slot for Jax. Depends, because like once it hits stage 5, those two units are like getting CC'd to death, and so it's arguable that this is a good item on them. So.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to see no one willing to try it. So
yeah.
All right, then a bunch of Radiant buffs. It's interesting because blue buff is an example where like I don't think more people are picking blue buff anymore. I don't think anything changed there, but data-wise, it is now performing much more in range where we want it. So like I'll still call this a successful buff.
Yeah, I agree on that front.
Stone Plate, on the other hand, was another one where it wasn't enough. I don't think we moved the needle enough there.
I don't know if I agree that we didn't move it. The item is so statty, but it's like armor and MR just isn't very valuable in it, where like armor and MR are so accessible through traits and some units' abilities, and it can get shredded pretty easily through a lot of access. So. But yeah, we had other axes to like be able to tune this. Let's just like the health regen, which would have been nice to buff that up too.
Yep. Demon Slayer, I think, was a success. Again, moved it up in the damage. Now when it's not as good, it's still good. And again, when this item is multiplicative, it's very multiplicative. I've seen this do really well on Nocturne. Has been the big success case I've seen, because again, you get the crit multiplier, you get the AD multiplier, and then the percent damage amp multiplier. So I don't know. I think Demon Slayer's in a good spot now.
I think so too. I think this buff actually made the item really good. And I think it's being slightly undervalued maybe in the competitive community, because like, everyone talks about how good 3 costs are, but like at this item, you will almost always deal the extra damage to 2-star 3 costs. So it's like, it's super good against them as soon as you pick it at 3-6. So 3-5. So, yeah.
Agreed. Ginsu nailed it. I think Ginsu is exactly where it should be now, finally. So called that 30%.
Yeah, I was thinking this was too much, and Mort was like, nope, it has to be 30%. And it ended up well, so good.
It's right where it should be now. It feels good. Like, and I guarantee you with the next patch with Kale, this is going to be a hot item.
Oh, I'm scared about Kale for the next patch, but yeah, just tell everyone, like, sometimes Mort has these like instincts that are like killer, and he just like gets it, and it's like, sometimes when I'm not sure, it's like, okay, Mort, we're gonna trust your instincts because Mort is right. Like Mort's instinct just sometimes just nails it, and so this is one of them.
Yep. All right, Covalent Spark. Again, I think this is another one where we got it right. I think it's still a really good item in our data. I think it's still like number 1 or 2. So
I think it's still like the effect is just so good. So this nerf didn't hurt it that much.
Yep, which is good, right? It still gets to highlight the effect. You just don't get a free bonus on top of it. Jeweled Gauntlet. This is one that like it buffed the effect, but I think this is one where, to be frank, I think we may have screwed up the design a little bit. The fact that it doesn't give you any extra critical strike chance means there's a very high percentage of the time where this item is doing nothing. And then there's a small percentage of the chance where the item is doing amazing things. And I think that variance can often lead to inconsistent performance. And so if maybe this is something we have to tackle in 11-18, but I don't know. This item definitely is still damn near the bottom. And I don't think upping the number is going to solve it.
I mean, I kind of like that it's like the ultra spike. You can see huge numbers rather than like a more consistent, smaller numbers.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
That's kind of cool, but I feel like part of its like weakness is tied to Karma, and people are like picking it on Karma, not giving Karma any other AP, and then Karma like doesn't scale well without AP, and then they're losing fights because of that. I feel like that's part of it.
I,
And, you know, once
I
you
would
get some more, bring karma up a little bit, that'll help.
I would push back because no one's running this on Vel'Koz.
I think people are running this on Vel'Koz, just not like there are other options such as like Radiant Hot, Hand of Justice. That kind of outshines it.
Because you'd think this item would be insane on Vel'Koz because he has the built-in spell power from either Spellweaver or Redeemed. So this item should be amazing on Vel'Koz, and the fact that it's still damn near the bottom of the dumpster, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like the data is being skewed because of like the bad performances, but you know that also means that like it starts out somewhere near the middle or below the middle. So
like
the common usages, but yeah.
Well, I guess that's a good point. If 11-17 after like the karma buffs and some of the reassessments, if it's still in the dumpster, then maybe we should really take a look at it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Agreed. All right, Locket. I mean, it's okay when it's okay, and it's terrible when it's terrible. I think this is another one that may need a slight rework kind of thing.
I agree on that. Like we buffed it. This is a pretty nice big buff, but like it's still not a good item. Nobody really takes it. So
Volibear exists, so
Volibear.
Yep. Death Cap. I think this was good. Nothing much to say. It's a fine. You need a lot of AP item. Really good on Karma. Really good on Teemo. Really good on Fiddlesticks. A lot of champs this works on.
Yeah, agreed. It just brings it up to the power level of some of the other multiplicative damage items. It's good.
Redemption, same thing. It's still a good item, so it just shows you how overpowered it was.
Yeah, it had a huge nerf, and it's still really good. So good item.
Yep,
good change.
Static Shiv. This one's interesting because again, data-wise, it looks okay to good. But overall, it's actually like no one wants this item. It's probably one of the least picked, isn't it?
I think so. Like it's not. I think it's just difficult to use, which is why it's not picked as often.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we can buff this item much more, but who knows? Maybe some of the Sentinel work in 11-17 will bring this to favor with like a crazy Lucian build or something.
Yep. Pikachu Lucian or Kale. Let's see.
Oh, true. Kale. Kale might like this item a lot. And then Sunfire. This is one I feel like slam dunked. It's like Sunfire's still good, but again, just don't need the bonus. Kind of like all the others. So yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Cool. In the small changes side, I'm gonna browse through these real quick, but Cannoneer 2, called it, good nerf, happy with that. Hellion, this was one we almost screwed up, but then we A-patched it to make sure it was good. Again, it's weird because again, we thought we were hitting 6 Hellion. Like the 6 Hellion part of this might now be incorrect, and we actually should have kept it at 75 or 80. I know it's weird, but because no one's playing 6 Hellion really, unless they play the 4 Hellion Tristana comp and then hit all their stuff and then hit level 8 with a Hellion spat, you know?
Right.
Which at that point you're supposed to be powerful anyway, but
yeah. I mean, there might be something that's still there with like Kled or it's playable, but yeah, I see what you mean. Like maybe we shouldn't have done this nerf because everyone was playing 4 most of the time anyways.
Yeah. That's a hard one. I mean, it was a small nerf anyway, so.
Yeah.
Nightbringer, I think we nailed this one. Nightbringer's still playable. Feels pretty balanced, actually. So happy with that. Ranger, I think we could have went further. I think the challenge is going to be here, and we're not moving on this yet, but at least me personally, I feel like Ranger, the trait, is still kind of bad, and it's being carried by 2 very good units in Aphelios and Akshan.
Possibly, but like we're also seeing kind of Varus reroll pop up, which is not like one of those S tier units, but like it works really well, and then they run 2 Rangers, and it's nice. So
yeah, I feel like it works okay, and it's like I almost think if anything, that kind of reroll comp should actually be like again, if 2 Ranger was like 90 or even 100, like that might be kind of where it's supposed to be, and then pull some of the power from the champions, but
possibly those are big numbers, Mort.
Well, I mean, the other way I put it is, if you have a Ranger spat, are you excited to put it on anyone?
Yeah, kind of. Well, then I would try to go full Ranger, of course. So, yeah. So, like, could we have gone further? You probably. I don't know about 100% though, but yeah.
Who are you excited to put Ranger spat on?
Let's see, Draven in a Vayne comp, Kale in a Varus, or Kale most of the time. Jax is pretty good with it.
Yeah, we should probably math it out and like just compare like 2 Ranger to Ginsu and see where it lands. But yeah,
Yeah, I think attack speed in general just like lands pretty well, and like most units just want it, even if you put it on
well,
like a
yeah.
Lulu or something. So
I mean,
yeah,
even a Vel'Koz is like, I'll take attack speed. So
yeah,
all right, Sentinel. I think this was a light nerf. Again, this is another one of those like it was fine, just not enough. 3 Sentinel still really good. So
yep,
it is what it is. Skirmisher 6 buff, same thing, good, not enough.
yep.
All right, Leona. I think this was a fine buff. I saw a lot of people were like, I'm worried about this, and it's like, worried about what? Your tank might tank? Like, the only thing is, I have seen some unkillable Leona 3s that are like insane, but they're really rare.
But even then, this is like a starting mana buff only, so
Right,
like
right.
that Leona 3 would have been unkillable anyways.
Right.
So
Agreed.
yeah.
Olaf buff, I actually think was correct. This is one where like maybe we could have gone a little, but I don't think so. I think this actually nailed it.
I think so too. I think going further is kind of just like it brings the 2-star down to a 1-star like heal level, and it gets kind of weird from perception wise, at least. Also,
yep. Vayne, I think again another camp where we didn't go far enough. The only positive is that somehow we are starting to see some Vayne 3 work a little, but I don't think 5AD changed that if anything. And so the fact that Vayne is still Garbo in stage 2 is like we didn't go enough.
I agree. I agree.
Sejuani finally feels balanced. Sejuani might finally be where she's supposed to be. Set didn't do enough. Thresh is hard because like this was actually a big nerf, but this just might be the reality of Thresh. He is a single target, hits a corner, and causes them great suffering and pain. That's kind of his identity. And I think if we go further, we're just like making him useless.
Yeah, I think this is like I think it landed pretty well because like there's like a lot of tension there when like my corner unit gets pulled 4 hexes up, and it lands like right where Misfortune's about to ult. I'm like, oh my god, am I gonna like is it gonna kill me or is it not gonna kill me? And there's like whereas before I would just one shot the unit and wouldn't have done any of the pulling. So that was kind of cool. But also I think Thresh shouldn't be like CCing for 4 seconds and also dealing like 1,000 something damage. And so like that 800 was I think it was reasonable.
Yep. Varus positive. If this is what caused Varus 3 to be a carry, good. I'll take it. I don't actually think we need to go much further with Varus. Like I said, at least on the champ, maybe on the traits, but not on the champ.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, Lee Sin. I think the mark miss here, and I think you called this correctly, so this is my miss, if anything, is that we should have touched Lee Sin 1. I think Lee Sin 1 is still too much of a powerhouse, especially if you can get him out of a box. Other than that, I think this was correct, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the mana nerf was spot on. I think we could have hit Lee Sin 1 because of how strong he is in stage 2.
Yep. Lulu, it's silly. We just had to B-patch Lulu. I still think this buff was correct. It's like when she buffs allies, that should feel good. And I think this was still correct. It is really weird to be like, you buffed one of the champions in the comp that became the annoying thing. And so you could call us out on this and be like, you shouldn't have done this. And maybe that's true. But I still think this was correct long term.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a correct buff because we want Lulu to lean more into like buffing allies rather than CCing everybody. And so I think this should have just been like wholesale packaged with the nerfs, or like just not done at this point in time when Lulu was already so strong in the Hellion comp. Yeah. I think so. It's just timing, but I think in the this direction was correct.
Yeah. Riven, could you imagine if we didn't ship this? Holy crap! Now, part of this is the emergence of the Riven Rakan comp. That was one that I don't think at the time of creating the patch we were fully aware of, and that started to really show its head and giving, the fact that she had the Legionnaire healing, usually a Bloodthirster healing, and then if anything she gets CC'd, well then Rakan just heals her back to full anyway. I think put Riven at a new level that we weren't comfortable with, and so if anything was amiss here, it was that Riven wasn't far enough, but it was a little bit like we would have had to predict that Riven Rakan comp.
Agree.
Yasuo just feels correct. I think, again, Yasuo is like a little too strong right now, but only a little. So, again, I'm happy with the amount we did in a single patch here.
I agree. Yeah, he's pretty close, I think.
Ivern, I think this was a slam dunk. I think Revenant is still a CC nightmare, and pulling down some of its CC, thank God.
Yeah, I disagreed with this at first when we talked about it, but it ended up. I think this was ended up being a really good change.
Yeah. I still think there's a world where even this becomes 1.5, 1.56, because the value of Ivern 2 should be like a lot more health. Because it's such... Ivern is so valuable right now.
Yeah, the amount of effective health he provides for your board it's huge.
It's comparable to A-Bomb. Like, that's how good it is with Revenant and everything. Okay, Rel finally feels like a balanced champion, as crazy as that sounds. I think she's a good 4-cost tank with good utility, but, like, she doesn't go in every single board in the game now, so...
Still really good, but yeah, I think this nerf was definitely, like, helped bring Rel 1 especially down a little bit when you hit an early Rel.
Yep. Akshan. I gotta keep getting his name right. Akshan. I think this buff was, like, inconsequential. It was fine. It didn't do any harm. It didn't do any good. Akshan 1's still, like, meh. But Akshan 2 is really good, so...
Yeah, I don't think this moved too much either. So, like, you know, I don't know if players noticed, like, the change in it. So it's a pretty small move overall.
Garen, I think the 2-star buff was correct. I think you were correct that we probably could have gone further on the mana. We went light to be safe. Again, another case of play it safe, don't thrash too hard. But I think we could have gone harder.
Agree.
Gwen, I think we didn't buff her enough. Gwen is fun, and when she pops off, she's really fun. But it is very difficult to get a 2-star Gwen with items to pop off. So I still think she needs more love after this.
Yeah, I agree. Unless you get, I've seen some assassin Gwens terrorizing people, but yeah, for the most part, I think Gwen, it's like really difficult to make work. So could have gone further.
All right, Heimerdinger. This one's really debatable because you and I debated for a long time whether we should go harder, whether we should not. And the reality is, I don't think Heimer's S tier right now. I think he's S tier if you get him. Like, obviously, 2-star Heimer with perfect items and a full Revenant frontline is still really, really S tier. But, like, it's a lot harder to get there now. And so you were right that, like, Heimer 1 isn't quite the stabilizer it used to be. But I personally still think it might be too good. So,
yeah, I can see that. Like, for some, like, when players hit, it's just so punishing. At the time, we were kind of like thinking, you know, we nerfed Ivern, we nerfed Volibear, we're nerfing A-Bomb, we're nerfing a lot of things across the board, and so, like, we're also nerfing Heimer 1, which, you know, Draconic players need to stabilize at level 8, and so then it's like we're nerfing so many things. Heimer 2 should be like the payoff if you hit, and so that's why we ended up doing it. We could have probably gone a little bit further on this, though, in hindsight. We were afraid of going, like, swinging too far, though.
And that's where, like, I think it was correct to not thrash too hard. So, Volibear 1 nerf, I think this is a slam dunk. I'm happy with this.
Yeah, agreed.
And then items. Rabadon's being a little better. Sweet. That seems fine. Redemption being a little worse. Seems fine. I do wonder if Redemption might be too nerfed at this point. I don't know. I've seen people run it. I've seen people run 2 to 3 Redemptions. Like, I think this item's still good.
I think it's still good, especially with, like, the damage reduction portion. When you put it where you can, like, position that around where you want it on your backline, save yourself well cost. It's still a valuable item, I think.
Yep. And then Sunfire, I think we nerfed it as best we could, and honestly, I forget. I didn't check the data, but it seemed okay. Like, it seemed lower than it was, which is good. So,
yeah, it's still going to be good, but you know, we just wanted to tone it down a little bit. So I think this change was good. It was okay.
All right. So overall, again, the theme of the patch has basically been good, but not, you know, enough. And so then fast forward to, and by the way, we're recording this on August 18th. So we just did a B patch 6 hours ago. Because specifically, again, we talked about the innovation of the Tristana backline comp. This is the Tristana, Kennen, Poppy, Lulu, Thresh, and MF. And then you put them all in the back corner so that the enemy comp always decorners. and then Tristana always jumps into their backline and assassinates their carry. That comp just was a little too frustrating and a little too well performing when you got all its pieces. So we nerfed Tristana. I know the mana part was the biggest debate one. We had some people going, well, now she'll lose the Syndra match or win the Syndra matchup. But I still think 3 autos less to actually get in there and do some damage and have your carries live is much more valuable than a particular Syndra matchup. And then Lulu, we nerfed the CC quite a bit. Definitely still, again, same theme. It might not be enough. We're trying to not thrash too hard. But I certainly think the Tristana changes alone, because again, the attack speed especially, how it multiplies from the spell and multiplies from the items, that's a lot of multiplicative damage down.
Yeah, I agree. And unlike the whole mana thing, it's like she gets the assassination much slower now, which gives your carry more time. I think like the pro con there is worth it. You lose this intro matchup, but like she also times worse with like enemy threshes now, so she can jump into the corner and the thresh can hook her. And so like there are trade-offs there, and we'll see how it lands. We just shipped the patch out today, but we went hard, just not hopefully didn't need to go harder.
I think so far we've seen this comp still win a lobby, and then we've also seen this comp get hard 8s. So it's one of those, we'll wait and see what Reddit tells us to think. So.
Yep.
All right, so overall, I think again, it's interesting. I remember saying this a couple months ago that like I don't care how many changes are in a patch as long as it makes the game better. And this has felt like one of those kind of patches where it's like there were a lot of changes within this patch, but it didn't actually shift the meta that much. It just kind of tightened it up. And so I think we're in the state now where the set's in a good spot, and expect to see a lot of these kind of patches where it's just like a lot of nickels and dimes to tighten things up.
Yeah, definitely. Like just these tiny changes, like small movements, 5% here, 5% there. It won't shift the meta at all. Just like tightening up bands. As we like maintain the meta.
Cool. All right, well, that's going to do it for the 11-16 Post-Mortem. As always, if you enjoy these, let us know. If not, also let us know. We could use a half an hour back if you guys aren't liking this. So, cool. All right, that's going to do it from us. Until next time, take it easy.